Hi, guys. So, we are going to go ahead and keep on going with our book, The Witches by Roald Dahl. I wanted to give you a heads up. This chapter is a little bit longer. I'm going to actually do it in two different videos. So, to start the first one, I'll ask you, excuse me, one of those reflection questions about a connection that you can make with the text. And I want you to be thinking about that as we read the whole chapter. We'll also talk about the vocabulary words in the first video for this chapter, and then in part two, at the very end of that, I'll ask you the questions for the chapter. So you'll watch both of these at the same time, or before you answer the questions. I just wanted to make sure that I broke it into two pieces so that it was an easy upload for me to get onto the internet for you guys, and it wouldn't give us too many problems. And that way it gives you a good space too that you can kind of like step back and wait, and take a little break, have a snack, whatever, and then watch the second half of the video. So today, the first question that I want you to think about, in terms of a connection with your life is, have you ever had to move from one place to another? We know that our narrator in this story had to move from living with his parents to then living with his grandmother in Norway, his Norwegian grandma. And that was different for him. So have you ever had to do that? Describe your experience. If you haven't ever had to do that, then think about what it might be like. You can make a connection that way as well. Maybe you've got a friend who moved and they've shared their experiences with you. Imagine how you would feel if you were in the same situation or a similar one to that of our narrator. There are three vocabulary words in this section that I want you to think about, and those words are the word appalling. So what does appalling mean? Think about that. Listen for it while we're reading. The word petrified and the word vicious. Okay, so this next chapter is called The Grand High Witch. Like I said, it's pretty long, so I'm going to read a few pages. And then I will stop just about halfway through, and I will stop the video, and then we will pick up where we left off in the next section of the video. The next day, a man in a black suit arrived at the house carrying a briefcase, and he held a long conversation with my grandmother in the living room. I was not allowed in while he was there, but when at last he went away, my grandmother came in to me walking very slowly and looking very sad. "That man was reading me your father's will," she said. "What's a will?" I asked her. "It is something that you write before you die," she said. "And in it you say who is going to have your money and your property. But most important of all, it says who is going to look after your child if both the mother and father are dead." A fearful panic took a hold of me. "It did say you, Grandmama," I cried. "I don't have to go to somebody else, do I?" "No," she said, "your father would have never done that. He had asked me to take care of you for as long as I live, but he had also asked that I take you back to your own house in England. He wants us to stay there." "But why?" I said. "Why can't we stay here in Norway? You would hate to live anywhere else. You told me that you would." "I know," she said, "but there are a lot of complications with money and with the house that you wouldn't understand. Also, it's said in the will that although your family is Norwegian, you were born in England and you have started your education there, and he wants you to continue going to English schools." "Oh, Grandmama," I cried, "you don't want to go and live in our English house. I know you don't." "Of course I don't," she said, "but I am afraid I must. The will said that your mother felt the same way about it, and it is important to respect the wishes of your parents." There was no way out of it. We had to go to England, and my grandmother started making arrangements at once. "Your next school term begins in a few days," she said, "so we don't have any time to waste." On the evening before we left for England, my grandmother got on her favorite subject once again. "There are not as many witches in England as there are in Norway," she said. "I'm sure I won't meet one," I said. "I sincerely hope you won't," she said, "because those English witches are probably the most vicious witches in the world." As she sat there smoking her foul cigar and talking away, I kept looking at the hand which was missing the thumb. I couldn't help it. I was fascinated by it, and I kept wondering what awful thing had happened that time when she had met a witch. It must have been something absolutely appalling and gruesome. Otherwise, she would have told me about it. Maybe the thumb had been twisted off. Or perhaps she had been forced to jam her thumb down the spout of a boiling kettle until it was steamed away. Or did someone pull it out of her hand like a tooth? I couldn't help trying to guess. "Tell me what those English witches do, Grandmama," I said. "Well," she said, sucking away at her stinking cigar, "their favorite ruse is to mix up a powder that will turn a child into some creature or other that all grown-ups would hate." "What sort of creature, Grandmama?" "Often it's a slug," she said. "A slug is one of their favorites. Then the grown-ups step on the slug and squish it without knowing it's a child." "That's perfectly beastly," I cried. "Or it might be a flea," my grandmother said. "They might turn you into a flea." And without realizing what she was doing, your own mother would get out the flea powder, and then it's goodbye to you. "You're making me nervous, Grandmama. I don't think I want to go back to England." "I've known English witches," she went on, "who have turned children into pheasants and then sneaked the pheasants up into the woods the very day before the pheasant shooting season opened." "Ouch," I said, "so they get shot." "Of course they do," she said, "and then they get plucked and roasted and eaten for supper." I pictured myself as a pheasant, flying frantically over the men with the guns, swerving and dipping as the guns exploded below me. "Yes," my grandmother said, "it gives the English witches great pleasure to stand back and watch the grown-ups doing away with their own children." "I really don't want to go to England, Grandma." "Of course you don't," she said. "Nor do I, but I'm afraid we've got to go." "Are witches different in every country?" I asked. "Completely different," my grandmother said. "But I don't know much about the other countries." "Don't you even know about America?" I asked. "Not really," she answered, "although I have heard it said that there are witches over there that are able to make grown-ups eat their own children." "Never!" I cried. "Oh no, Grandmama, that couldn't be true." "I don't know whether it's true or not," she said. "It's only a rumor I've heard." "But how could they possibly make them eat their own children?" I asked. "By turning them into hot dogs," she said. "That wouldn't be very difficult for a clever witch." "Does every single country in the world have its witches?" I asked. "Wherever you find people, you find witches," my grandmother said. "There is a secret society of witches in every country." "And do they all know one another, Grandmama?" "They do not," she said. "A witch only knows the witches in her own country. She is strictly forbidden to communicate with any foreign witches. But an English witch, for example, will know all other witches in England. They are all friends. They ring each other up. They swap deadly recipes. Goodness knows what else they talk about. I hate to think." I sat on the floor watching my grandmother. She put her cigar stub in the ashtray and folded her hands across her stomach. "Once a year," she went on, "the witches of each separate country hold their own secret meeting. They all get together in one place to receive a lecture from the Grand High Witch of all the world." "From who?" I cried. "She is the ruler of them all," my grandmother said. "She is all-powerful. She is without mercy. All other witches are petrified of her. Then they go to see her only once a year at their annual meeting. She goes there to whip up excitement and enthusiasm, and to give orders. The Grand High Witch travels from country to country attending these annual meetings." "Where do they have these meetings, Grandmama?" "There are all sorts of rumors," my grandmother answered. "I have heard it said that they must book into a hotel like any other group of women who are holding a meeting. I have also heard it said that some very particular things go on in the hotels they stay in. It's very peculiar. It is rumored that the beds are never slept in, and there are burn marks on the bedroom carpets that toads discovered in the bathrooms, and that down in the kitchen, the cook once found a baby crocodile swimming in his saucepan of soup." My grandma picked up her cigar and took another puff. inhaling the foul smoke deeply into her lungs. "Where does the Grand High Witch live when she's at home?" I asked. "Nobody knows," my grandmother said. "If we knew that, then she could be rooted out and destroyed. Witchophiles all over the world would have spent their lives trying to discover the witch headquarters of the Grand High Witch." "What is a witchophile, Grandmama?" Here's a picture of the crocodile swimming in the soup. All right, that's the first half of our video. I'm going to go ahead and stop here. We'll start with what is a witchophile on the next video.